Hello and welcome to the Highways Magazine podcast with me, Dominic Brown, the editor of Highways Magazine. This podcast will be bringing you news, views, interviews and hopefully some gossip from inside the world of the UK highways industry. We're dedicated to you. I admit, before we go any further, we don't have the most imaginative name. The Highways Magazine podcast, the Highways podcast, we're not sure. If you want to get in contact and offer us a better name, someone suggested the Hard Shoulder, which I think is currently a front runner. Our last podcast was called All Roads Lead, but that just became so difficult to say and we had too many questions. So without further ado, for now it is the Highways podcast. Okay, now on to the news roundup. So it's been a really huge couple of months since the start of the year. A lot has happened, so I'm going to go back a little bit away just to catch you up. Our February issue in Highways Magazine was a huge month where almost every roads policy the DfT had been working on had a major announcement. A national safety strategy, pavement parking, local transparency ratings, more of which later. But I'd like to start with the departure of Nick Harris, Chief Executive of National Highways. He announced that he is stepping down and there'll be a short transition period while National Highways find a new Chief Exec. This means two things, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, it turns out the rumours circulating the conference circuit last year of Nick Harris's resignation were not exaggerated, and I was wrong. I was wrong to report you have to wait till they order a coffee table book because that's like the big indication of when the chief executive is stepping down. I apologise for that. But secondly, Mr. Harris has a damn good poker face because last year I asked him face to face, mono a mono, IRL, whether he was standing down, and he said he'd be sticking around for Riz Free. Now, it is possible, of course, that he changed his mind. Events, dear boy, events. But as a public service, I should warn you, do not play poker with this man. He will bluff you. Mr. Harris came into the role. National Highways was under significant pressure, most notably from the smart motorways issue. So much so it even rebranded around the same time. One headline from August 2021 read, Highways England gets bizarre rebrand and new chief exec. Whether the rebrand was bizarre or not, Mr. Harris's appointment made a lot of sense. An acting chief executive who stayed on and did exactly what he no doubt promised ministers he would do. He took the pressure down a gear or three, handled the press well, was always polite and approachable, and radiated calm, careful leadership, even when in front of committees and under significant scrutiny, particularly about smart motorways. So you might say that a safe pair of hands isn't the highest of praise, but if countless jobs and an entire multi-billion pound roads agenda rested on your shoulders, perhaps you would feel differently. So I should say many thanks for your service, Mr. Harris. We really appreciate you. Now, next we have the National Road Safety Strategy, released by DfT earlier this year. Again, the strategy, years in the making, delayed for years, so it's a significant step forward for road safety in this country, and many people were celebrating it, almost just because it got released and it was a statement of intent. But it's also got lots of things to recommend it, not least some very tough targets. Reduce KSIs, that's killed and seriously injured, on our roads by 65% and cut KSIs for children under 16, well, so children, I don't know, anyway, by 70% by 2035 using a 2022-2024 baseline, so quite a recent baseline. So that's really impressive. Tough targets, very important to set challenging targets, very important to set the right baseline, and I think, a lot to be celebrated there. The strategy says it's based around a safe system approach, which very briefly is basically the concept that people are going to make mistakes while they're driving, and we have to ensure that any mistake doesn't result in a KSI. So it's producing forgiving road environments that accept mistakes are going to be made. Now, it's funny how often this is widely considered best practice now, but it's funny how often in conversations you have people, even in the sector, you still get the attitude, oh, well, it's the public's fault, they're the ones who are responsible for crashes. And I have to say, that's missing the point. It may be that people are making mistakes, but the price of making a mistake shouldn't be death or a life-changing injury. That's the key concept here that we're trying to get across. And I think it's really time we all took that on board, from the politicians downwards. And I have to say, recently I was slightly disappointed in a recent debate in the House of Commons from MPs discussing the road safety strategy, where you still got the feeling this hadn't quite sunk in, this idea that we need investment in the road environment to make it safer and forgiving, and not just focus on the mistakes that people made. Anyway, so on that topic, I think there are some fairly big omissions in the road safety strategy, in my opinion. And by my opinion, I mean people who are much more informed than me, whose opinions I will be stealing for the next couple of minutes. So commentators highlighted that the safety performance indicators, SPIs, that will be used to monitor the success of the strategy are mostly lagging, not leading. This is what Richard Owens, CEO of Agilysys, a leading transport safety consultancy, said. Performance indicators should be leading, not lagging. This rules out 14 of the 17 SPIs in the safety strategy list. It doesn't mean we shouldn't look at historic casualty data, but given the tight deadline for such an ambitious casualty reduction target, we need to be monitoring lead indicators. So the only lead indicators that the strategy is monitoring: proportion of traffic volume with drivers travelling within the speed limit on 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour at national speed limit roads, proportion of motor vehicle occupants using a seat belt in front seats, proportion of drivers using a mobile phone with driving. So all of those elements, obviously speeding, not wearing a seat belt. I mean, honestly, let the record show my extreme dismay that anyone in today's society would not be wearing a seatbelt. But anyway, proportion of drivers using a mobile phone, obviously distractions. So speeding, no seatbelt, distractions, all good lead indicators. However, we don't have a proper lead indicator on the infrastructure, okay? The International Road Assessment Programme, a star safety rating, is used by national highways to improve the risk levels of the network. So you conduct a survey of the network and it gives you a star rating of how safe or unsafe your network would be. Now, National Highways has had targets in the past to improve the star rating levels on our roads. And Mr. Owen, who I quoted earlier, said that the use of IRAP would be a great lead indicator. In short, we could, by setting a proper target and a proper SBI around the inherent risk level of the road, we can really be proactive and get out in front of any possible mistakes that people made, any possible issues that occur on the roads, to create that forgiving environment. Sadly, that hasn't been included in the strategy, although the strategy document does raise the issue that IRAP is important and it is being considered. So we'll kind of watch that space for developments. So the big debacle in our February issue, which we reported exclusively, is sector-wide, I think it's fair to say, criticism of the Department for Transport's rating system for local highway authority maintenance. There's a bit of background here. So basically, the DFT got criticised for not having enough transparency and not having enough through line between the money that they're putting into the system and the outcomes they're getting. So they were criticised by the National Audit Office and the Public Accounts Committee. And so they put in place, civil servants working behind the scenes, very, very competent people. They put in place an idea that they would boost transparency and they would start getting reporting in, and they would use that reporting to then develop a kind of analysis system, a kind of development from the previous self-assessment system, probably very similar, perhaps a bit more refined than the one we've had previously from 2015 to around 2020, 2021, when it kind of slowed down and got kicked into the long grass, basically. So this is a revisiting of that principle. They asked people, local authorities last year, to hand in transparency reports. Local authorities duly did that. probably not fully aware that these transparency reports would create a kind of national rating system. We heard behind the scenes that there was talk of having a league table, so perhaps they got off lucky. The DFT simply rated people into green, high performing, amber, middle, and red, lowest rating. So 16 councils across England were in green, 125 were in amber, and 13 were in red. So far so good. It sounds like a perfectly decent policy. Let's try to have some transparency and accountability. Nothing wrong with that. However, very, very quickly on the release of these ratings, people in the sector got in contact with me directly, and I'm sure many other people, to raise very serious concerns about the way the data was collected and the reporting outcomes based on the data. So I should say that there's quite a bit of money riding on these ratings, because the self-assessment system usually has some money attached to it to create an incentive for driving better standards in highways and highways maintenance. So unsurprisingly, if you're going to be green rated, you're probably in line for a bit more cash. Right? And that's an important point to note. Now, the concerns came in. Former CEO of Elcree, Paula Clayton-Smith, very well known in the sector, now working with the Future Highways Research Group, she explained to Highways, there looks to be fundamental errors with the source data in the transparency reports, much of it around spending data. I think some councils have misunderstood the question, or at least there seem to be different interpretations on how to answer the question and how much capital spend has been assigned in the year. Some councils will put down their entire capital spend, which is something of a red flag, because it almost certainly would include planned spending for future years. On the other hand, others seem to have put down what is allocated for this year, so their capital figures look like they're not spending their full amount. On all the 13 of councils that have been rated as red, I've identified some form of discrepancy in the highways maintenance spending figures as part of their transparency reports. As there is no worked example, so no guidance to show the authorities this is how it's done, you can see how errors creep in. And that is a view shared by many other leading figures in the sector. Chief Executive of the Road Surface Treatments Association, Mike Hansford, told Highways, we need clarity in what is perceived to be preventative maintenance, with one green-rated authority's transparency reported figures appearing to be contradictory to their statistics on reported road lengths receiving treatments. There was an error in the original guidance document for the transparency reporting, which listed resurfacing as an example of preventative maintenance. Okay, so you've got a couple of different issues there. A, the fact that the councils are misunderstanding what they're supposed to be putting in these forms. B, the fact that there seems to be some misunderstanding from DFT, or some misrepresentation from DFT about what constitutes what when you're actually filling out the forms. I should say the performance rating is measured by 3 areas to create an overall score: the current condition of local roads, how much each local highway authority is spending on maintaining its roads, and how effectively each local highway authority follows the best practice in highways maintenance, for example, by using technology to fix and prevent potholes more efficiently. So there's some misunderstanding about that. Now, the upshot of this is that some councils, including Suffolk, are basically appealing the decision. They're demanding that the DFT relook at this and give them a new rating. And possibly more importantly, council directors' body ADEPT, which is a famously diplomatic body, very careful, very considerate, very circumspect, very, an absolute pillar of the community, and very supportive, very close to DFT, works very well with all partners. So a very, august body, not prone to kind of, hot takes, shall we say. Anyway, their president, Angela Jones, said, the newly published ratings raise significant questions about the assessment methodology. We would like clarity on how the ratings have been calculated, including how different data collection approaches and funding allocation timings have been factored into assessments. So that's again talking about how local authorities have actually responded to these reports, because they seem to have put in the wrong data for the wrong years, that type of thing. We need to ensure that ratings fairly reflect genuine progress across different local authority areas, Ms. Jones says. In the future, We believe local authorities should have the opportunity to verify data and clarify any factual questions before ratings are published to ensure accuracy and build confidence in the system. Now, that is pretty much a rebuke to the DFT. That's that's a tough. I would imagine it's pretty tough for the DFT to hear, because that's about as outspoken as Adept will ever get on a policy issue. And they've basically said to the DFT, "We want you to run this past us." DFT responded. I don't know whether that would happen. Now, I went to DFT for a response. I was hoping the DFT would kind of reach out an olive branch here. I don't think that's happened, but we'll see how this develops. A DFT spokesman told Highways the suggestion that the department has mishandled or ignored data is categorically untrue. The ratings follow a clear, published methodology using data from official statistics that local authorities provided themselves. And that's all true and fair enough. And you can see why the DFT are placed in a bit of a difficult position here, because they've only asked for the local authorities to respond with published data, and they thought it's a pretty much a simple form. But it's clear there has been some misunderstandings, and perhaps some more guidance is needed. I personally think the best point made about this situation came actually in our March issue, jumping ahead. But this is John Munslow, chair of the National Highways and Transport Network and member of the UK RLG, a very important body that links DFT with the sector. He was writing exclusively for Highways, and he makes this point. The approach taken by DFT prioritised local publication and flexibility, which made sense in a transparency-first context. However, it also meant that national aggregation, validation and quality control could only happen after the fact, placing a substantial burden on DFT, making it difficult to ensure that the data is truly comparable and defensible for national ratings. So you see, really clever point there. John, being very diplomatic, saying what the DFT did was great for their policy, which is this transparency policy, but there are, and he knows about this because working with the NHT network, obviously they are responsible for this kind of public satisfaction service and know all about surveys. To get the data that you would need to create national ratings may have needed a slightly different approach. So I think that's a really intelligent point from John and worth highlighting. So the other story that caught my eye, which is the final story to catch you up on, action on pavement parking. The DFT has announced it will create a regulatory framework that is national in scope but local in implementation. Nice little soundbite there, which is effectively passing the buck to local authorities. But anyway, they will hand new powers to English strategic authorities to tackle footway parking, except in London, where it's already prohibited. In non-strategic authority areas, the power would go to the highest tier council in the area. So DFT officials say a permanent devolved solution to pavement parking, as it is commonly known, requires primary legislation followed by the development of a regulatory framework governing how devolved solutions are to be implemented. We will look to legislate on this at the next available opportunity. Before bringing forward that new law, ministers will also introduce secondary legislation enabling local authorities with designated civil enforcement powers to enforce against the most egregious examples of obstructive pavement parking. So good news and bad news. I mean, we're getting action on pavement parking, which is really important. It's one of these things that's kind of easy to think, well, how does this apply to me? But if you're a person living with blindness or partially sighted disability, if you're a wheelchair user, if you're a person pushing a pushchair, this is a really serious issue, and sometimes can make the difference between a safe journey to the shops and not even being prepared to take the journey because it won't be safe. So it is really important that this is addressed. I personally think it's right that local authorities are given the kind of powers and it is devolved. I don't necessarily blame the DFT for devolving on this one, but a lot of people disagree with me. And there are many people out there who are saying, like the RNIB, which represents blind people in the UK, Eric Matthews, policy lead for travel and transport, said the proposal falls short of the consistent nationwide solution that we recommend. And this is the key, and it's kind of a thread that's running through the DfT at the moment. If you accept something is a risk and is a problem, allowing a local flexibility, allowing a kind of piecemeal approach, is that really tackling the risk? Or is that flexibility just kind of accepting a level of risk? And is that fair for people who happen to be in an authority or in an area where action hasn't been taken compared to someone whose life is genuinely improved because they live in an area where action has been taken? We're seeing this a little bit in the safety strategy and other areas of DfT policy, whereby devolution, which absolutely has its value, is, according to some people, impacting on risk and our ability to treat everyone across the UK fairly. So I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts. That's your roundup, taken mostly from the February issue because we're back with the Highways podcast, so I thought I'd catch you up. Some big stories there, and next month we'll be looking at the March issue and looking ahead to all of the big announcements coming up. We've got loads of great things happening inside the Highways Magazine team that I want to tell you about as well. So first of all, coming up, we've partnered with the Road Surface Treatments Association to launch a series of workshops or road shows, call them what you will, under the theme of sustainable and resilient highways. I don't need to tell anyone listening to this podcast that potholes are a problem in this country. The state of the roads is often criticised and it's a political hot potato. So, Highways Magazine has launched these workshops so that we can bring the entire sector together, local government, national agencies, the private sector, the supply chain, and trusted partners like the Road Surface Treatments Association and other experts, so that we can work together in a safe space as a collective to try and find what's the future of road maintenance. How can we really build sustainability and resilience over the long term? What innovations haven't become common practice yet, business as usual, and what part of business as usual needs a bit more innovation? So I want you to, as soon as you can, go online, look up Sustainable and Resilient Highways with Highways Magazine and Road Surface Treatments Association. On Thursday the 28th of May, we'll be in London. On Thursday, the 4th of June, we'll be in Scotland. On Tuesday, the 16th of June, we'll be in Northern Ireland. On Thursday, the 9th of July, we'll be in Birmingham. We've got some great speakers. We've got some great involvement already, including UK RLG, who are supporting this. We've got Amanda Richards, the chair, doing a keynote in London. So absolutely get involved. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see you at the event. I personally think together we can do anything, including solving the pothole crisis. So I'll see you there. Okay, the other massive news we've got at Highways Magazine at the moment is the launch of the Highways Champions Awards. They're coming on the 4th of November this year at the Intercontinental London Park Lane Hotel. We're still running the Highways Awards. They're for projects, they're for teams, they're for companies. This Highways Champions is for people. If you know someone in your team, in your company, who's always going above and beyond, who's been in the sector, who's been the heart of the sector, been the backbone of the sector, been the broad shoulders of the sector, who's done the legwork of the sector, has been the eyes and ears of the sector, whatever they've done to support this industry, if you think they deserve to be celebrated, I would highly advise you to go online and enter them into one of our many categories that gives this sector the chance to put a medal around the necks of the best and bravest people we have, who are, in my opinion, the best and bravest people in the country. So I love this sector. I know many of you love it too, and it would be nothing without the people that make it happen. This is an opportunity to celebrate them. So please go to highwayschampions.co.uk. You can nominate as many people as you want. So, start now and just keep going, basically. Oh, what's the deadline, Lara? Super producer? 12th of June. 12th of June is the deadline. That's good interaction. This is the stuff good podcasts are made of. Oh, I should say, it's not black tie. It's going to be a posh hotel, but it's going to be in the afternoon in lounge suite. So I don't know whether that swings it for you, but I'm going to look forward to not having to do up a bow tie for these awards. But I'm very much looking forward to being there. Do tune in for our next Highways Magazine podcast, where I'll be joined by Rob Shearing, Chief Executive of the Road Safety Markings Association. They've just celebrated 50 years. They've got loads of exciting news coming along, so please do check that out when it will be released very shortly in the coming weeks. And do stay tuned. We're going to hopefully release at least one a month, maybe one every 2 weeks. We're going to be asking everyone in the sector to get involved. So if you want to take part in the Highways Magazine podcast, please do give me a call, email, get in contact, and we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to have you on. So thank you very much for joining us. Safe travels, everyone. We'll see you next time.